Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick and today I thought I'd take you through another October harvest. Today is October 9th. I know what you're thinking, my goodness, where has the year gone? I completely agree, but I cannot believe that we still have tomatoes. Guys, last year it was like we almost got one tomato and then the blight hit. I am getting a little bit of very incredibly late blight on some of my tomatoes, but not very many of them. Most of them are looking incredibly healthy. The ones that I've got growing up sticks are looking amazing. I don't know if it's the aspirin I sprayed on them, or if it's luck, or if it's just the drier weather because now it's getting very wet. I have to say that a lot of the tomatoes that we're growing now are split, so I am giving a lot of them to the chickens, which means that I'm going to have some lovely fat chickens. But it's not very good for eating. Up until now, my favourite tomato has been the black cherry tomato, but this time of year, guys, honestly, it's split. I don't think I've had one that I've been able to harvest properly in absolutely ages because of this heavy rain. So it is a little bit different. I do like the little heart shaped ones. I think they're called ox hearts, and they are really good. I've got some pink ox hearts that I'm actually harvesting about now. They are really good, hardly ever split, and are really fantastic this time of year. I'm also getting some huge beefsteak tomatoes. I did actually harvest yesterday, and my Gigantica was huge. It was the biggest tomato I've ever grown, but I came with my friend and I gave it to her. It was just absolutely huge. So we're still getting some absolute whoppers, of course. They've calmed down a little bit. I have pulled off 2 baskets of tomatoes and peppers this weekend. Chili peppers have calmed down to almost non-existent, but the tomatoes are still giving and giving and giving. Getting lots and lots of tomatoes. As you can see, I'm just checking them. They could be poisoned, you've got to be careful. And basically I'm eating the ones that have split, but there's no bug infestations. Anything that's like slightly gross or that I have that is split, I'm gonna go ahead and give to the chickens because the chickens will absolutely love it. They'll pick at it for the next like day and a half, and they will absolutely be appreciative of that. We grow absolutely tons of different varieties, about 50 varieties off the top of my head, and I have to say that this time of year you really do see the difference between the varieties. For example, the garden peach was amazing at the beginning of the year, not getting any edible ones of those. They're all splitting and being attacked by insects, so it's really important that I get them really soon. But now I'm back at work and I'm working full time. It is very difficult to come down and spend much time down here and work full time, run a house and have child and have other things in your life. Not that I'm complaining, I still spend most of the weekend down here, so it is all about budgeting my time. But it is lovely to spend a little bit of time down here, especially when it's nice and quiet. As it cools down, less people start coming down the allotment, and you kind of get the whole place to yourself. I've been very spoiled because I absolutely adore coming down here and being the only one on the allotment, so it is quite lovely. As you can see, I'm still picking absolute tons of tomatoes. These tomatoes have really outdone themselves. I'm going to be drying these tomatoes and making them into tomato puree, but instead of having it as a paste, I'm going to have it as a powder. I'm quite excited about this idea. It's the first time I've done something like this, so wish me luck. So I'm just going to stick them in the dehumidifier like I've done everything else, and then just put them through my coffee grinder once they're done to make a fine powder. So I'm super excited about having this much food available throughout the year because it really does cut down on our food bill. This is the time of year that we really don't want to be paying too much on the food bill. I was speaking to one of my friends yesterday saying I just can't believe how much food is actually costing now. Everything seems to be going up and up and up, and it's really nice that I know that I'm going to be secure for what in terms of tomatoes in for a very long time. So that's pretty awesome. This is Jasmine's little plot. She's done so well, bless her. She's absolutely grown loads, and this time of year, honestly, this is where I'm getting most of my tomatoes from, and they're absolutely delicious. They've really come into their own. I'm not sure about any of the varieties here. I cannot remember, and labels are long gone. I've got about a bowl a basket of tomatoes now, which is awesome. And I also have a few squashes left. This is custard squash, and I've got a few lovely cabbages ready for next spring. And this one is called Sunburst. I cannot believe I've still got squash. Alright, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Hello
Please
and welcome.
remember to
Today,
subscribe.
I thought I'd
See you next
do
time.
some
Bye
more
bye.
harvesting. Can you believe it's September now? And we've still got tomatoes. We've still got peppers. We've still got everything. Yes, it's slowed down, but oh my goodness, isn't it doing well? So come and have a look with me.
So I'm starting off with my tomato harvest. As you can see, I've pretty much got a basket already. The tomatoes have actually slowed down a little bit due to the weather being so, well, the days getting shorter, etc. It is now in autumn. We've had the equinox, so things have slowed down somewhat. I'm still getting about 2 baskets of tomatoes off of this allotment. I'm only in tomatoes, so I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but remember in the summer we were getting like 2 baskets every other day, so they are slightly slowing down and ripening later. I'm getting quite a lot of cherry tomatoes, but obviously the larger tomatoes will take longer to ripen up, so it will be like every other time I get large tomatoes when I go down there. I'm trying to be considerate of my partner. His pet peeve is baskets of fruit and vegetables on the side at home, so I am going to be cooking all of these the next day from here. This is a Saturday, so I cook them all on a Sunday. And because he doesn't like them being on the side, I'm going to make them into tomato sauce. I do eat quite a lot of them fresh, but I do find myself not always finishing them in a day or two.
Do you see the size of this one? It's huge.
If you do have any recipes for tomatoes, please let me know. I'm also making big batches of eggplant and blending them up and freezing them in little muffin sort of tray sizes. I'm really going to be enjoying that for the winter because I like to put eggplant in stuff, but I don't eat a lot of it, so about the size of a muffin is way enough for me to add into soups and stews and things like that. So I do give a load of tomatoes away to people at work and friends and family. People are always very, very happy to receive peppers and tomatoes. The cherry peppers that I'm going to be picking here, the hot peppers, I've already strung up and dried. I did that on the day after this, which is a Sunday. I'm very excited about having dried chilies. Dried chilies are really important for me because I eat a lot of them throughout the year. We have a lot of sweet chili sauce, which requires chilies, and we also have a lot of chili flakes, and we eat a lot of curry and chilies. So it's going to be really great to have that on hand.
Look at the size of that. It's huge. Look at it. That's probably the biggest one that I've grown. It's huge. And this one's not bad either. The rain is making these huge.
I have to say that these plants are really, really feeling the benefit from all of the rain we're having. Although the rain is causing the tomatoes to split and the peppers to cork, it is really benefiting them as well. Like I said, some of them are splitting, but the vast majority are absolutely perfect. So I am making sure that I'm picking out the ones that I have or discarding the ones that I cannot use. The birds are always, always, always very excited to have any form of broken tomato, or throwing them in the compost and letting them be turned into compost is another really fantastic idea for split tomatoes. Now, sometimes you can cut the piece that split out, but I do find this time of year, by the time I've found them, they have started to mould, so I'm a little bit wary of that. And this is the first kind of semi-big harvest I've had from the greenhouse this year. Got quite a few tomatoes coming in now, thick and fast. It is rather exciting because this is how I'm going to be extending my season, because soon the ones outside are going to be done. They've been giving lots of tomatoes throughout the season, and these ones have just begun, so they're taking over from the tomatoes. I always think it's really interesting when I watch farming videos that they have successions of tomatoes, and that's something that I don't really see in the actual gardening world. So I thought I'd give it a try this year. However, when I was doing this, I was thinking to myself, it was really strange because I had the seedlings in pots in the greenhouse, and I thought to myself, oh, you're too small to plant out. Well, I'm planting them out in the greenhouse. So eventually I did put them in, and I did think to myself, how silly. But it does take a little while for you to get out of that mindset. As you can see, the pepper plants are breaking off a little bit when you're picking them. It's just because they're getting a little bit old. Once again, I'm not sure whether I'm going to pull these out and save them or just pull them out and get rid of them. I want to be deciding that over the next few weeks, trying to see how much room I have to store these over winter. I might take them to work with me. It's all very exciting, and if I do, I'll show you how I'm going to be doing that. It's a very simple process to save pepper plants, but I have already collected the seeds from a lot of these peppers, so that I'm not going to be missing out on any pepper plants next year. So just in case you were wondering, the reason why I might do this is because it actually gives you peppers a little bit earlier next year. So this is Jasmine's little area. She picked some cherry and plum tomatoes to put in her little area, and they're doing really, really well, like incredibly well. They're super healthy, and they are producing a lot of tomatoes. I think I got the vast majority of a crate of tomatoes from this area alone. It is amazing how much that one area can give, and I do think that her tomatoes are giving the most amount of tomatoes at the moment on the allotment, which is very, very cool. As you can see, enjoying a lot of the tomatoes as I'm picking them. I do eat a lot of these tomatoes whilst I'm at the allotment, on the basis that I love tomatoes. I am picking some tomatoes that are split. I'm just basically removing them from the plant because they're still going to be taking energy from that plant. Some of them that have just split because it's raining all the time now in the UK. I'm just going to go ahead and eat, on the basis that, well, waste what not, want not. I don't like putting them into the baskets because, like I said, I'm going to process these the next day, and they do tend to kind of mould up. So I try to keep the tomatoes in as good quality as possible. If they are split and healed over, that doesn't matter because, like I said, I'm going to use these for canning. Some of them are going to be for fresh eating. I always have a bowl of cherry tomatoes at home that Jasmine can snack on and I can snack on throughout the day, because it stops you reaching for chocolates and things like that. Now we've got the old top is a basket. You can see the basket's right next to me, so it's not really an excuse, but it is so handy to do that. Now, I didn't think that was a bad amount, considering that it is September. We do have a frost coming in a few weeks, but the weather gets really, really wet and foggy. This is the squash that I've actually got from the allotment today, but I didn't film because I was helped out by an allotment friend. Good harvest today. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Bye bye.
Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick and today is October, and today we're going to do a little bit of harvesting. Let's get started.
So it's another day down the allotment where Bailey is hanging out with me and keeping me company. He is a very outdoorsy breed. He's a Dutch herder. Dutch herders love being outdoors. As long as they're with you and they're outside, they're completely happy. So I take him to the allotment quite a lot. He is getting better and better at being at the allotment, and he helps me harvest. He loves vegetables. I think I've said this before. He loves vegetables with like the sort of passion of a rabbit, really. He absolutely adores eating tomatoes, and in a little while I start throwing tomatoes for him. He does eat a few of them and he does really like them. I try to keep him steer of all the chili peppers and things like that because he would try to eat them and they're no good for him. He doesn't like spicy food. He likes things that are nice and plain, like a tomato. So these tomatoes that I'm actually harvesting here, I'm actually going to be popping in my dehumidifier, and I'm going to dehumidify them and turn them into a powder. I have read that the tomato powders are similar to having tomato paste or tomato puree. We don't actually buy tomato puree because we get so many tomatoes throughout the summer. We tend to just use those throughout the winter and obviously through the summer months. So I'm a little bit reluctant, or don't really even think about buying things like tomato puree. So it'd be nice to have a tomato puree supplement. So I'm going to go ahead and dehumidify these and then blend them up in my coffee grinder so that I have them on hand. Now, I fit about the whole basket of these in my dehumidifier, so that was very exciting for me. And I'm going to continue as long as the blight stays off to dehumidify all of the tomatoes that I'm getting now. But obviously, the blight is coming in, the days are getting a lot shorter. In the height of summer, I was getting a basket of these tomatoes, if not 2 baskets of these tomatoes, every other day. So that's like a ridiculous amount of tomatoes. So I've got tons of these already. I've got as many jars of tomato sauce that you can imagine. I've got chili, I've got curry, I've got plain tomatoes, chopped tomatoes, tomatoes with basil in them, roasted tomatoes, you name it, I've got them. I've actually run out of jars. So I'm set for the winter, but I would quite like to have some powdered tomato to use as tomato puree. As I said, as the days sort of go shorter and now we've got the fogs rolling in, I do expect blight to come any day now. But I do think that the aspirin that I've sprayed on these plants have done a whole host of help for them, on the basis that the tomatoes aren't getting blight, and I did spray them with the aspirin. I haven't even put these ones up along the stake. I've just let them lay across the ground. So I do think that they have been really helped by the aspirin that I've sprayed on them. So if you ever have a go, some dispersible aspirin, just put a tablet in a quart, or basically a litre, that'd be enough just to spray it down. The aspirin treatment isn't actually a treatment, it doesn't cure it, but it does prevent blight. So it's really important to get onto your plants before blight arrives. So as I said before, I'm actually dehumidifying my tomatoes. This is my dehumidifier. I just pop it on and leave it. I've still got a little bit of the courgette flour that I'm making. The courgette flour is exactly what I plan to do with my tomatoes. So imagine this was tomato. I'll probably make a little video of doing it, but just putting it into my coffee grinder and really making it into a thin powder. I imagine it being quite nice like that. Once again, this is something that I've only heard of, I've never seen done, so it'll be quite exciting for me. But this courgette powder has worked out amazing, and I really do love that. So I think it's going to be really, really cool and a great thing to try. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It really helps us. I cannot believe that I got up to 500 subscribers, I should say. That is absolutely crazy. I genuinely made this channel just for a bit of fun for me to do. I didn't expect anyone to subscribe. I was very shocked, and I just wanted to take this time to say thank you ever so much, because it is pretty cool. I absolutely love talking to you all. You guys have given me so much advice and help along the way of like making things with my mountain of tomatoes, etc. So I just wanted to take this time and say thank you so much. You are amazing, and thank you for making this a community. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Happy
Hello and welcome
gardening.
to That British Homestead. Today I thought I'd take you through one of my basically final harvests of my tomatoes and my eggplant or aubergine, depending on where you come from, and my peppers. So things have started to cool down. The days are getting shorter. The weather is getting very foggy. Blight has started to fall in, so I am removing my plants when I have harvested them, because basically there's not going to be enough time for the fruit to actually develop any sort of anything before the frost comes. So we've only got a few more weeks into our frost, so I'm going to be clearing this area. I'm quite excited. I went and picked up a load of horse manure the other day, and I will be, once all of these is out, I'll be pulling up all the plastic and putting horse manure, chicken manure, blood and fish bone, and what's the other one called, hoof and horn meal down, to sort of enrich the soil again. So I'm quite excited about that. But at the moment, I'm kind of like anything that's blushing, I'm pulling up. I'm having a big problem with slugs at the moment and snails. I don't really want to put anything down to kill them, and I'm having issues with my beer traps, because if I put a beer trap down, the foxes absolutely love it. I feel like I'm catching more foxes than anything else. Like I said, I'm just pulling them out. Now they're not going to go to waste, because I'm just going to go ahead and put them into the chicken enclosure, and they will pick through and eat anything that's developing on them. They love seeds and things like that. And that's what I'm going to be doing with all of the plants you're pulling out here, because my birds are really incredibly good at foraging this time of year. I'm not too sure. My second from last lot of chickens were absolutely useless at it, but these ones are so enthusiastically foraging. So like I said, you can see on these plants they are being very much affected by blight. I do find that as soon as the fogs come in, the blight sets in, so I am having a little bit of issue with that. And anything that shows any blight, I'm not going to be taking home, because there's no point of it rotting at home, and I want to be using this as a sort of dried tomato paste. So I want to make sure that I only use really, really good quality tomatoes in it. So I'm getting tons of cherry tomatoes. I do think the cherry tomatoes are, like, although smaller, you just get much more of them per plant. The black cherries are very, very, very splitty at the moment, but these normal cherries, I think they're just called red cherries, are really prolific. So they're doing really, really well, and they are not splitting with the heavy rains that we've been getting, which is very nice. I am finding that lots of them are splitting, and there's lots of damage from slugs and things like that on them. But once again, I'm not going to treat that. I know that you can put down slug pellets, but I'm choosing not to. By this time, I've had so much from this particular patch in terms of tomatoes that I don't have to worry too much. I'm very enthusiastic of trying to make the most out of all my harvesters, because although this is a lot of work, if I'm not reaping the reward, then there's not very much of doing all of this work, is there? Not much point, I mean. So I'm making sure that everything that I do has some sort of point to it. As I'm working full time, I don't have oodles of time to be down here. As you can see, I am trying to make everything as productive as possible, and even using these as a little bit of food for my chickens is such a good idea, in my opinion. So I'm making sure that they have everything that they are possibly able to have, and as you can see, they're absolutely loving life. These tomatoes have been a godsend. In the height of summer, I was getting about a one basket of these every other day, which is incredible. I have more sauces, curries, chili sauces, you name it, out of this than I could have possibly imagined. I'm so grateful, and I think I've got enough for at least 2 years, so I definitely don't need to be making this many. I don't know, maybe we are, because we're going to be giving some away and etc., but it is very exciting. And we also have tons of fresh tomatoes. We just had dinner and we had fajitas with homemade fresh salsa, which was awesome. And we do love a lot of salsa on like dinners and things like that, so it's really exciting to have things like this. And jalapenos, I definitely need to triple up the amount of jalapenos that I am actually growing. I'm going to probably try to overwinter some of my more successful pepper plants and make sure that I have them, see if they do overwinter. I've been reading up about it, and it's quite an exciting prospect. As you can see, I'm just giving all of the chickens some of these plants, and they will peck through them. They'll eat the snails and the bugs off of it, hence why I'm not using any slug pellets and things like that, because if they do eat that, that does bioaccumulate, meaning every step in the food chain it gets a little bit more concentrated, and does end up poisoning birds and things like that, and hedgehogs. So I do try to stay away from them. And these being completely organic does mean that A, it's better for us, and B, it's better for any of the birds that we put them in. And I'm really starting to like chickens, because I find them like a compost heap on steroids. They will pick through everything, they'll eat everything, they will mix around the compost, and they will make sure that all the seeds have been eaten, and they will be turning that into delicious eggs or delicious meat, depending on why you're keeping them. And I've really found that quite exciting. Now Jasmine is down the allotment with me, as you can see. She's been incredibly helpful, and what would we do without her? She is helping me find all of the tomatoes, believe it or not, that are a little bit bad, and she's feeding them to the chickens. She likes doing that. Her favourite thing is by far the animals. She's a big animal person. Ducks, chickens, turkeys, you name it. She absolutely adores them. So I'm just picking out all of the plants here that have blight or are affected by blight. There's a few tomatoes that have split open or in some way are unedible for us, and we're going to go ahead and give them to the chickens. So we gave the chickens a load of the old plants and some of the tomatoes on there. They were absolutely having a feast, but then I walked in and they're like, no, this is our space, and they've got to sit over there. But there's absolutely tons of food just there, and that'll be a great way to keep down the food bill. Hey, Jasmine?
Looks like they don't need to be fed for a month.
Yeah, I know, right? As we get split tomatoes and some tomatoes, like them ones I don't really like, so I'm just going to pop them in there and they're going to feast on them. Yummy, yummy. They love tomatoes. Still quite a lot growing, don't we, Jess?
Yeah.
This is what's growing, this little mushroom.
Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick, and today I thought I'd go through a little bit more of the sorting of the allotment and a harvest of our squash. Let's get started. So I'm going to start off with apologising. I do have a little bit of a cold. My partner, he is very sick and in bed at the moment. And there's also my street are having some awesome firework display just as I started recording. So if you do hear some bangs in the background, I'll do my best to edit them out, but just know that there's people down my street having a whale of a time, which is absolutely beautiful. So today I am removing some of these plants that are in my greenhouse because I just started to take some of the peppers. I found a mushroom as well, but my main focus here is clearing the squash from this allotment. So this allotment is basically done. The squash have sort of died off. It is getting colder and colder and colder, and I'm beginning to just clear up like the dead plants that are around this part of the allotment. As you can see, they're coming up super easily because there's not very much left of them, and there are some squashes that I'm finding along the way. So they've done so well this year, guys. I can't tell you how many squashes I've got basically enough to see me all the way through until the harvesting starts again, like loads, which is really fantastic. I'm absolutely loving them. I had some butternut squash for dinner last night with a puffy pan squash, and I kind of mashed it up in my gravy. Oh my days, it was amazing. Really enjoying them. I'm also taking this opportunity to do some weeding. As you know, the weeding does get away from us, and it is very much like a boom of weeds in the autumn months. And I know that they're just trying to, do their best and set seeds so that they can overwinter and things like that. And I understand that, but it is a bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is go through and just remove them. And I've got two piles here. I've got a pile for all of my perennial weeds, which I will burn because I'm not resowing them. Yeah, I've got enough of them. And I've got ones that I can put in my compost. So I'm going ahead and putting these squash plants in the compost. They will rot down and be used for a compost next year, so it'll be a great way of reusing these plants. I think it's really important to make sure that you're always making your own compost on the basis that it is so important to have compost. It's expensive, it's hard to get to the allotment, and it's important to know what goes in the allotment. You're on about a 50-50 mix, which means 50% of green. I think of it like this: if it turns mushy and disgusting, it's green. If it is more like dry and crumbly, like say wood chips, it is brown. So that's kind of like a good way of thinking about it. Every so often I just go ahead and put a little bit of wood chip in there, or chicken bedding or something like that, just so that it is a bit of a balance, so it doesn't turn into a slimy, disgusting mess, or is it just too dry. I also water my compost quite a lot. So you can actually turn compost to make it compost heaps to make it turn into compost quicker. I never do that. I'm way too lazy, and I always get in within about a year. Sometimes they say 2 years, but really you can just sieve it, take out all the big bits. Eggshells break down really, really slowly, so I tend to crush them up or powder them and then add them to the compost, or even give them to the chickens, to be honest, because they do break down slower. The problem with using chicken or even duck bedding you can go ahead and just put straight on your plants. It's cold composting, so it doesn't need to be composted first, but both might have some seed in there because you feed them seed, like scratch seeds, so you do get barley and things growing. I think it's awesome, and I go ahead and just pick them out and feed them back to the chickens because sprouted seeds are so good for them. But if you're not cool with doing a little bit of extra weeding, maybe take that into consideration. But if you do kind of like enclose and insulate your compost, if you are composting it, then you will go ahead and destroy them seeds, but it needs to get above 60 degrees, okay? So it's quite high for a long period of time for the enzymes in the seeds to denature. So do bear that in mind. I kind of come under the thing of just being like, whatever happens, happens. Like I said, I want to stick these into my compost. I will put lots of water in there because
because water basically helps the breaking down of the organic matter within that sort of time frame. I'm also making sure that there's a little bit of like soil or anything on the roots. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it goes in there just to make a really healthy sort of environment for microbes. Additionally speaking, some people put their compost on concrete. You do want the worms to come up in there, and it's a different type of worms. They're like red in colour instead of the earthwormy looking ones that we're used to. They're called composting worms. They probably have a fancier name, but it's really important that you ensure that they are in there. So it's best to have it just flat on the floor. And then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and remove the bottom. So the reason why I'm doing this composting here on this allotment is I want to kind of compare the quality of this compost to the compost that I'm going to be making at the bottom of my chicken run, just so I have a nice little comparison, see which one's quicker and see which one is slower and which one's better quality. I think this is the main reason why I really like ducks is because they can turn wood chips into compost within weeks. And I think the main reason they do this is because ducks love water, right? And I was thinking, oh my goodness, she has just broken new ground. No, everyone knows ducks love water, but because they're splashing in the water and you empty out the water and they're just constantly in water, and water's just everywhere with ducks. Ducks are disgusting. They poop water as well. Like if you've ever seen a duck poo, I'll never forget when my sister come round the first ever time when we got ducks. My sister is like designer handbags, speck of dirt, throw it away sort of person, and she's talking to me, she's like, oh, the ducks are really sweet, aren't they? And as she said that, the duck pooped and it just went everywhere, like just splattered. It was like quite gross, and just the way she like recoiled from it just always makes me chuckle when I think of it. Well, that wonderful property of the duck makes them perfect for making high quality and low temperature compost. So if you have ducks, you can go ahead and scrape up the wood chip in their run like once, I think I'm over exaggerating, maybe it's like once every 6 weeks or something. It just turns to soil. So I'm actually due going in there and clearing that out. I use that at home. It smells lovely, but it is also not something that will burn your plants. You can go ahead and put it on there. I mix mine with a lot of wood chip, but like I said, the wood chip will break down really quick. So it will break down within like a couple of months, which is fantastic. And then you go ahead and put that on your plants. And once again, like depending on what you feed them, there might be some weed seeds in there. It doesn't get hot, so it will not kill off the weed seeds. So just bear that in mind. But the ducks do a good job of digging through it and finding and eating loads of seeds anyway. So I just think that's a really interesting option. And I kind of want to decide which one I think is the best. I think I'm just going to use a combination of all three methods just because it is easier and better for me. I've had some really fantastic results with all three. I really like compost that I made, but I do find homemade compost quite dry, so that's something to bear in mind as well. If you're using it as a mulch, it doesn't particularly matter. So I do use a load of compost on here, and I will be like using horse manure, and horse manure is wonderful, but I do have to travel to get that. So in mind of like cost and carbon footprint, obviously I've got to bear that in mind. Anything that I can make on the allotment, keep on the allotment, store on the allotment, and transport around the allotment by manpower or woman power, it's always got my like seal of approval sort of thing. I've done that with my carrots. I cannot believe that I've already got a bed of carrots that are ready. I feel like I only just planted them like a couple of weeks ago, but it was in August, and they are looking absolutely fantastic. It is now almost the end of October. It's October 24th by recording, so you're not going to see this until Wednesday, I think. So that's the October the 6th. So yeah, exciting stuff. I'm really excited about putting some compost down on this. I'm just going to lift up the plastic, put the compost down, and then go ahead and pop the plastic again down on top. I find it really helps with the weed load. We do have a rule that we do need to keep our plots weed free, which I know what you're thinking, and hey, it was weed free not that long ago. Well, it wasn't, was it really? But I do endeavour to do so. So I'm going to use a bit more black plastic on here just until I kind of get the weeds manageable. You have to remember that this particular area has not been cultivated for 4 years. 4 years no one grew on this. Okay, the weeds took a very, very strong foothold. Before that, this particular plot was never really ever used in memory of this plot, okay, of people being on the plot, as in people would take it over, try, get defeated by the weeds and pass it on to the next person. So it is very, 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 very heavy on weeds. If you saw my other plot, you understand what I mean, okay? I'm not giving up, don't get me wrong. I'm like, okay, I see your weeds and I raise you some new idea that I've come up with. Dock seeds are particularly prevalent on this plot. There was a lot of docks when I first took it over, and dock seeds are just the worst. They kind of stick on things and travel around. So it is something that I'm going to be kind of addressing, and over the next couple of seasons or years or whatever, I'm going to wear down the seeds, okay? There's only so many that can germinate. I will pick them and I will not let them go to seed. So eventually I'll kind of like weaken the perennial plants by picking the leaves, and I will overall get the annuals out over time. I'm not going, like, what can I do? I could dig it all up, I could remove the soil, there's so much I could do, but realistically speaking, I'm just going to plug away at it, and every so often I come in here, I pull all of the weeds out, and then they grow back, and then I come in here and I pull up the weeds. Easiest thing to do, cover it with plastic. I do have quite a lot of plastic, and I know that lots of you message me saying I absolutely hate plastic. I'm totally with you. Yeah, I hate plastics, I hate microplastics, but at the moment it's one of those things where, if you consider that I have a full-time job, but with my job it says that I only work like 38 hours, but I'm assuring you with the paperwork and everything, I'm probably like doubling that easily. And then I do this for enjoyment and to feed my family, so it has to kind of fit into my schedule, okay? It's a lifestyle. So I use the black plastic to sort of reduce the weed load. I eventually want to move on to say Charles Downing's way of no dig, but until the sort of perennial weeds are killed off, I am really struggling with it. So I am going to ensure that I am using this plastic kind of to kill them and weaken them. I have removed so many stinging nettles from this plot, and they have a really firm hold. They have got a very extensive system, and as you can see, where I've done the no dig, they've come back even worse than before. So I am going to try to do my best. Basically, it's all we can do is do our best. All of my allotments are no dig, but remember, this has been cultivated for about 70 years, so I might not be doing no dig, but the person before me I know tilled quite heavily, and this whole area here was a compost heap, so I've just flattened it down, no digging at all, and I've spread the compost out, and there is a healthy lot of stinging nettles. This has not been touched for 4 years. The person before this did heavy tilling, and it's one of those things where people will be taking a lot of nutrients out of the soil and no one's going to be putting it back. So it is something to bear in mind when you get your own allotment and start working on your allotment plot. By the way, found this spaghetti squash. Wasn't it amazing? I'm still looking for squash, by the way. But this particular nettle patch is, look at it. I can't remember how many times I pulled this up. I'm just going to cover it with plastic and hope it dies off. Eventually it'll get really weak and die off. But like I said, it has a very, very strong foothold. I was actually pulling out the roots of this, and the roots were thicker than my arm, just muddles of roots all together. They're rhizomes, so every time you break a root and it goes into two, now you have two plants. So you've got to be careful. You can get in there and dig and sieve and things like that, but every time you dig and break it, you're making thousands more of stinging nettles, okay? And do you know what I was thinking when I was going through this? I watched a homesteading video the other day in America, right? And they had pots, like big, beautiful whiskey barrel pots, and they were gorgeous. And inside it, they were like, oh, we're just going to do a harvest. I was like, oh, I love a harvest. So anyway, I'm watching this, and they had stinging nettles in pots, and I'm thinking, guys, why have you got them in pots? You know, like, I cannot get rid of the blinking things. And I do wonder to myself, do they have stinging nettles in America? Because they were talking about the properties of them, and like, they are very nutritious, don't get me wrong. They are outstanding for you. I personally dislike them, but I understand what they're doing. They're making them into powder and added them to things. I find them very grassy in flavour, but what an awesome idea. I think that we kind of underuse things just in general, like rose hips. People put their nose up at them, but they are fantastic. Slowberries and things like that. So it will be something that I'm interested in. But at the moment, I've kind of got so much hatred for them kind of built up that I just kind of want to get rid of them. I just could not imagine. When I saw that, I was just like, you are cultivating them. But I do understand why. They are very, very underrated and very, very, very nutritious. But it just kind of foggled the mind when both at the allotment and at home I'm struggling with nettles. But I always say, if you see stinging nettles, do not get upset, do not worry. It means that you have fantastic soil, which is wonderful. I'm so grateful for having lovely soil. But I think from the elbows down, I'm stung red raw. So you see what I mean? Look how many docks are here. You could just tell that there was a massive dock plant here. And when I got this allotment, I don't think I understood the hatred that I'd developed for docks. And I went in with my sort of shredder thing, that it was like a really big rotatory saw disc sort of thing, and you just kind of and got rid of it all. And I just spread the seeds everywhere. But do you know what? Every year you learn a little bit more. And I'd never, before I got the allotment, sort of gardened on this scale. I'd done a lot of sort of home gardening. I've mastered home gardening. I used to walk around my home garden and be like, oh, I'm so bored. There's no weeding to be done. I wish I could pull a couple of weeds. And I used to get them, like, you know, when they get their seed leaves, and I used to pick them out at that stage. I know, right? Look at the state of my allotment. And I used to be like, oh, I wish I had something more to do, because I had so much more sort of love to give and not anywhere to do it. So then I got the allotment, and it is way more, this is a lifestyle. Okay, I was explaining this at work, how I just love my allotment and things like that, and they're like, dude, that's not a hobby, that's a lifestyle. 100%. If I'm not at work, I'm here. So you can imagine I'm doing a lot of work. I try to just pop down here in the week. I don't really do very much. I might do a bit of watering, I might do a little bit of harvesting, but I'm not like digging like here, because you get so filthy. But I'm absolutely loving it. It's just wonderful. I feel the happiest when I'm down here, which is just, that's what my daughter always says, Mummy, you're so happy when you're down here. I love sharing this place with my family as well. I think it's just so important to learn to garden. I did this with my grandma when I was little. When I say I did it with her, I kind of was in the garden willfully ignoring her as she did amazing things that I wish I paid attention to. However, I have to say, I don't know whether it was through osmosis or through some other means, but I've learned so much from her. So when it comes for things that she's taught me, like home gardening, I just have like a sixth sense. Allotment gardening or growing anything that my grandma happened not to grow, I did struggle with. All right, my grandma never grew a squash plant or a cucumber, which I just don't understand, because they're just so fantastic to grow, but she just never did. So it was something that I kind of learnt all by myself. And my grandma was one of them people that I don't remember a single weed being in her garden, and she was a digging method, and she used to do, you know, where you dig over and then you let the frost break it down and spread in the horse manure. It's probably some of the happiest memories of my childhood was out in the garden, kind of like just playing when my nan was gardening. I loved that, and I remember sitting on the side and her making pickles and green tomato chutney. Yes, if you grow tomatoes, oh my voice, if you grow tomatoes, you know the love of like, I've grown these, I'm going to do something with them. I've made that exact same recipe, bless my nan, and I just love it. It feels the closest to sort of meditation when I'm out here. I just love it so much, even when it's pouring down a rain or I'm pulling stinging nettles. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what way I should be eating these. But to be honest, I don't think I'll ever find a way of loving stinging nettles. But if you do know a way of loving stinging nettles, let me know. Because look at all of this abundance. If we could turn this into food, I'd be one happy bunny. Because to be honest, I don't want to brag, okay? I know you're thinking, she's bragging. but I'm amazing at growing stinging nettles. You give me a patch of land and I will grow stinging nettles on them. As you can see, I've grown them at home. I grow them here and I grow them everywhere. Look at how healthy these roots are, guys. Do you know what? I used really nice compost on this bit, and sadly my compost had stinging nettles. I don't know if it had stinging nettles in it or if fertilised stinging nettles, but I did an outstanding job of making sure that these were so healthy. Look how green they are. I know what you're thinking. Wow, she's very good at this. I've pulled these up a few times. I kind of get it away from me. In the summer, I don't have time to do anything. I'm literally either canning, cooking, or I'm harvesting. So you can see how it kind of gets out of hand. I've also got a lot of brambles, but I am slowly getting it. It does take time, guys. The thing is I feel that when people get allotments, they do think like, oh, I got an allotment, I'm not going to have a single weed. It's going to be easy. I'm just going to put some plants in the ground and boom, I'm self-sufficient. The reality is that you will be doing a lot of this, a lot of weeding, repetitive weeding, and slowly weakening plants over time. Honestly, if you think, oh my goodness, why is she doing this? I have a fantastic way of getting rid of stinging nettles, and it's just like this and this. Please let me know, because I will just love you forever. So I don't want to use any weed killer or anything like that because it's so close to my garden beds. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through and plug away at it. I'm going to just make sure that I'm pulling it whenever I have the opportunity. I can get to it, and over time I'll wear it down. I have found that over time it's getting easier and easier and easier. My next plot I had for slightly longer, and that is getting easier and easier and easier as well. They are very easy to pull out though, because it is no dig. They're kind of just coming out of the soil because it's so loose and not compacted, making weeding so much nicer. So here I've got a load of squash. These are all the found squash. So this is the best harvest. It's found squash. Look at that. Got a whole basket and another spaghetti squash, which is awesome. I'm loving these squash this time of year. I'm just loving it. Look at that beautiful basket. This is all of the harvest that I've literally found whilst clearing up. It is awesome, and I can't believe how much I've got. I literally was like, oh, I only bring one basket, I won't have much to harvest because it's basically finished for the year. I was so mistaken. I mean, look at all of those squashes. Jasmine was very helpful as well, helping feed the chicken in the background. And I just want to say thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If you haven't
Hello
so
and
already,
welcome to That British Homestead. My name's
subscribing.
Nick,
Bye-bye.
and today I thought I'd show you how I'm harvesting this volunteer squash. So this is a F1 hybrid. It's called a Buffy Ball. It's super cool. It is a pale, almost white colour, very miniature pumpkin, and it's perfect for people who either live on their own or people that live with other people who do not like pumpkins. So I've noticed as I was actually harvesting this pumpkin is that if they're on the floor, they tend to be super dirty, yes, and they have weird, strange brown patches on them, whereas the ones that are growing up in the air are absolutely perfect in every way. So that's why I was smelling it just then. But I'm just basically removing these from the plant by snipping them as close to the vine as possible and leaving a little bit of stem. So what I'm going to do is dry these out and keep them all the way through the winter. These Buffy balls really do store very, very well. And I actually bought them as I think 6 plants last year. I think it was. I can't really remember. It might have been the year before. Actually, I do think it was the year before. And they were quite expensive, actually. They were like $12.99 or $6.99 or something like that. Anyway, I really liked them, but I was like, I'm not going to buy plants every year. I kind of buy one plant of something new sometimes. And I was just like, oh, I'm not doing that again. But then I used them all. Like I said, they're really good because they're personal pumpkins, and I'd stick them into sauces on a Sunday to thicken up the sauce. It's I love the size of them because they're just perfect for only a small quantity, and you open it up and then it's all gone. But then I found one at the back of my shelf in my garage. I know I'm disgusting, and it was all revolting, so I kind of threw it at my compost heap, and it kind of went everywhere. And obviously I thought it'd rot all the way down, but it didn't, and a single seed sprouted.
and that single seed turned into this massive vine, okay, like massive, and it just went all over the garden. Now, when Bob saw it was all over the garden, he was like, I'm going to mow it with the lawnmower. I was like, oh, please don't, please don't, please don't. And he basically never got round to it, and it has produced a ridiculous amount of squash. This squash is prolific. The first time I had them, like, I bought the plants, right, stuck them in the garden. They're obviously, they get really shocked, like travelling and all of that sort of jazz. But I like put them on my vegetable patch. I like gave them lots of fishbone meal and chicken manure and all sorts of things. And I literally got like 5 Buffy balls from, I think it was something like 6 plants. And this time, or maybe 3 plants, I can't really remember. And basically this time, this is one plant. It was prolific. I found the squash this year were ridiculously productive and big and wonderful and bushy. And it's just really wonderful. But like I said, I wasn't planning to actually grow a squash in the middle of my garden. It's just near my compost heap. As you can see, it's my compost heap. You can't even see the compost heap because of the squash. So it's all grown over this bush here, all grown over the compost heap. It's gone really crazy. But all, like I was saying, the whole year has been fantastic for squash. I've grown Buffy squash, accidentally obviously, taffy squash, butternut squash, didn't do very well actually. Spaghetti squash did really well. I did baked potato and mashed potato squash, and I did loads of other like summer squashes, like patty pans. They did really well this year. I think it's because of all the heat. As long as you kept up the water in. I know it was difficult for some people because hose pipe bans, etc. But it was really, really fantastic for all of the squashes that were around. And this thing is just absolutely prolific, and it stores super well, which is very exciting. You don't normally get a really nice thing that stores super well and tastes really great. So like I said, I'm going to save some seeds from this. It was an F1 hybrid, but it's so well, and it's done so well this year that I see no problem with getting it. And I mean, this stored until like March the following year, you know, like ridiculously long storage time on it, whereas I've grown tambula squash and that lasted until about January, which is really good, but it isn't. I want them to last all the way through the hungry gap into the sort of time where next year I'll be like sick of squash and I'll be having a harvest, my early harvesting coming in. But it is very exciting that I have this one. And as you can see, it's super prolific. It's absolutely ridiculous how much has come out of this. So I'm going to be curing this squash by leaving it in a sunny, dry location. Normally it's in my kitchen on the counter, and I just leave it there for a little while until the skins harden up, and then I'll put it into long-term storage in the garage. I just leave it on some shelves. So that squash that I've just harvested, which is this massive bucket, massive, that was all from a volunteer F1 hybrid plant. Amazing. People say don't grow F1 hybrids, but I'm telling you, these look exactly like the plants that I bought. But this is obviously a volunteer. Oh, I know, really. And this has been 100% more productive than what it was a few years ago. Sorry, I'm getting attacked by loving Bailey. Here you are, Bailey. So Bailey does love this plant because it looks like a ball. So he has taken some of them and eaten them. He's such a naughty boy. Naughty boy. But I'm definitely going to save the seeds from this and grow this again next year. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.